Overseer's Log 9, The Last Postman. Hello, Wastelanders. My name is Kyle, and you are listening to the Overseer's Log. This is our accompanying podcast that follows along in our Fallout TTRPG series that we title Tales from Tomorrow Under the Mothman's Embrace. For many weeks now, I have promised that we would get our comrades to come by in a future episode, and after my move and schedule setting and settling down, it's finally happened. We have Sky, who plays Sam. We've got Dark Knight, who plays Jim. And we've got Mac Raven, who plays Raven. And what we're going to do for this episode is a little bit of an intro. So I think I will... many of the people listening to Overseer's Log 9 have an idea of what's going on in the plot. If this is your very first episode to start with, I might recommend some others in the catalog, like going and listening to the full series that we've actually done. You could start with episode 0 the whole way up to episode 9 right now on YouTube, and then we record a new episode every Sunday over at twitch.tv/Overseer Kyle and over on our YouTube channel, and all these links will be in the description below. But we're going to give the players here a chance to introduce their characters, and I've got some questions, fairly generic, just to get us started for this. We're now recording these on, at least for this week, Thursday night, and we're going to try and get these going on a weekly basis and invite as many of the cast and crew here along as they want. I'd love to have extra people here and love to have their insight. So welcome aboard, gang. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and just fire off the first question about people's characters, and we're going to have Sky give an answer first, DK give an answer second, and Mac, that gives you time to type that answer for the end for the text-to-speech bot. And if you guys want to jump in on other people's things, feel free. I'm just doing this so that people aren't like giving long pauses before they chime in. So I think this is a cool one. Sky, to you first. What memories from before the war might stand out most vividly to Sam? He's got a bit of a rich history and a lot of activity in the military, so maybe you could shine some light on that for us.
I would say that certainly one of the most vivid memories that he would have is just enlisting in the army to begin with. Afterwards, one of the bigger ones is losing his two compatriots when he was in the war. He had two really close friends that ended up disappearing. Other than that, I would also say that meeting his wife Amelia was a really big thing for him.
His wife, that's something we haven't gotten into on the show before. You want to give any extra details on the wife or the two compatriots there? I don't think those are things that we've explored in a big way in our episodes yet.
Yes, his past is a bit shrouded in mystery. He had these two buddies that he met whenever he first enlisted, named Faust and Tremont. Amelia was actually married to, or soon to be wed to Tremont, but during the war, it turns out that Faust had kind of taken a liking to her, and he devised a plot to try to get rid of him and make it look like it was the Reds' doing. So whenever they were outstationed, he was about to enact his plot, and all of a sudden, a big flash of light just randomly came and swept them away. And to this day, Sam really doesn't know what happened. It was just a big flash, and they were gone.
Wow. Is this a history? And you can be very cagey with your answers here, what you want to give away and what you don't. Is there any of Sam's past in that way that still has a possibility of returning? And you can again answer these questions however much you want, from whatever perspective you want, player or kind of character, because as you just said, some of it's very shrouded in mystery to him. Is this something that he's trying to get any more details on, or does this seem like a closed chapter of a book? What do you think about that?
I think West Virginia's mysteries could very well be intertwined with what happened that night in Anchorage. Some things in West Virginia, they come from beyond the stars, and I think that there very much is some play with those two. So I think that it very well could come back at any point for him. We might have to see how that road brings us.
Great answer. Very enticing to me. I'm always looking for little plot threads to pull upon. So, Dark Knight, let's move over to you then. The same question. What memories from before the war stand out most vividly to Jim?
Well, from a young age, he was very much, involved in technology. It was ever since he was, I'd say, about 4 that he managed to get a hold of a computer and was, always, making, just doing little things here and there on the computer, learning how to operate it and running different programs and things like that nature. But, I do really honestly think that one of the things that really stood out, was not only, the computer aspect, the technology side, but throughout the childhood years, just going to different sports games with his father and experiencing, the city life and, different things in the city of Pittsburgh and that area, the pit. And, I mean, if I recall correctly, he didn't finish a 4-year degree. He mainly did a 2-year, but that at that point, I think it didn't really matter because by that point the bombs were already, dropping, and he had found his way to a cave in the forests of the western Pennsylvania area and hid out there. But
I really like hearing your comment about his interest in the city life, because as I see you all rebuilding the town of Hope, it makes me wonder how much Jim is motivated to do that, because he's getting to see, well, literally, as you just built up a windmill in the last week, getting to see lights come back online. And I think that's maybe something we might even see in a future iteration of the map, is that even in the rule book, there's this discussion about having lights. I think it's tied into that the difficulty of fighting in the dark goes up technically. We've not used that mechanic yet, but I think that's why you might want to add light to your settlement so you can do more in the evening. And your character in particular, Jim, just played a very pivotal role in building up that windmill. So he's returning light to a town, and at that, a town that is quite well poised to collect other residents from the pit, people that might be fleeing or looking for better, safer harbor in the southern regions, going further into Appalachia. So I'm kind of wondering to ask you two if in particular Jim has any motivation for that. Does that stand out to him? Is that something he's eager to do, or does he feel any kind of calling to that position? Maybe.
Well, I mean, I think that he kind of has this yearning to almost see society like lively and functioning again, especially just the towns and the cities. And I mean, the bombs dropping wasn't really a surprise, because he had kind of come to his own conclusions through his time in college and in the city where the labor unions did and that sort of thing. He kind of come to his own conclusions that the conflict that was sprung up at the time with China really was going to end in disaster, and that the only way really to stop that, if there was such a chance, would be to of course change the entire system as it stood to prevent such a catastrophic event. But as we all know, nothing could have been done, because by that the bombs eventually dropped and things crumbled.
Yes, that's a very good point. Well, I'll be personally interested to see how Jim explores other parts of Appalachia as we go forward. As I always say, and has been something we've talked about since the very beginning, there's always the possibility of going to places like Foundation, or even taking a vertibird if you can find one to travel further, or maybe if you guys repair a ship, you could be looking at, further travel in that way. So I'll be very interested to see if Jim has ambition to explore some population centers and kind of what sort of trouble we can all get into there.
I do want to point out real quick that this just came to mind that I think part of the reason that Jim has this goal of like turning back on the power and bringing back the life of these places, I think has to do with the fact that, like, being tech minded, you need to have electricity to use technology. So he's kind of like, well, if we get these lights back on, the electricity running again, we could start to turn on this technology and rebuild it and use it to better our lives.
Absolutely. And he's got a lot of opportunities to do so. Your more recent connections with Modus and all kinds of different antiques requisitioners and things like that, like old Rusty Dusty Bones. Jim's in a pretty great position in terms of who he knows at this point. And, that'll be really cool. If you guys ever decide to, and this is completely up to the team if you ever want to do this, but if you're ever interested in like really upgrading a place that you live in, that's always a possibility too. Like if Jim ever wants to start like collecting computers for himself or like whatever that might be for each and every character, of course, sky is the limit when it comes to how far out you can spread and what he might be interested in doing. He's got some pretty cool opportunities recently to mess with the APC, and I know there's talk of trying to go get more antenna equipment for it. Poor Jim, though. He's had some rough rolls recently with that stuff. So yeah. I want to move on just for a moment to Mac Raven and ask her a very similar question. Her character coming from a radically different background than Jim. So, Raven, the same to you. What memories do you have from before the war? And what stands out most vividly to your character?
I have no memory before the war was born after the bombs fell. But I do remember growing up near the woods and a really big house with all these old pictures in them.
So born after the bombs fell. That must be a very different experience for Raven to be going from what I can only guess is living very, I guess, Mothman cultists, sort of hunter-gatherers in a way. They have a task and a purpose, but they are from all kinds of different walks of life. So I'm kind of curious how Raven is adjusting to being in such a populated city center. Populated meaning approximately 20 or so people.
Yes, it was a lot of hunting and praying, and seeing all this town people is very strange.
Yeah, those the audience at home didn't get to see it, but when Raven first went into this town of Hope, she was almost executed on the spot because there was so much animosity with cultists out there. I mean, it would be like as if super mutants came into the center of town or anything else like that. There were odd stares in your direction, and I can't remember if we did like stealth rolls or something, maybe charisma rolls, and we were testing to see how your character was doing when people would get a real glance at you. And I remember they were asking the other team members, like, who's she? What's she doing? And something went really weird where at one of the first nights that Raven was in town, the guards that were around the front of the church, they basically, I think they grabbed you outside of the cafeteria tavern area, huh? There was something going on in there, a little bit of a scuffle was happening. You went outside at one point, and I think a guard or guy in general just grabbed you and was like, what the hell are you doing here? And then they drug you to the center, over to the church entrance, and Mac almost had like a field execution day 1 or 2. That was really wild.
Oh yeah, they nearly hung me. Then I ate them shrooms and pink goo and went nuts. That was good fun.
Yeah, they have really come to have some trust in you, considering all of that, which you just said. Mac ate the nutritional pink paste that makes an appearance in Fallout 4. And that fungus too. I believe the fungus was also off air for people that there's a house that's now visible on Hope's map. I want to say it's the one next to it, actually. There's a house. Okay, so this one's off Hope's map still at this point, but a house that had like a fungal growth happening in there. And Raven reached and grabbed one of these mushrooms, and it started to very quickly like take over her body physically. Was sort of like draining her, I don't want to say life essence, but literally like feasting upon you. And that was a big issue. That's where the microscope quest comes through that I think Sam had just returned in one of the last 2 or 3 episodes. That microscope was requested so he could study what's going on with these fungal spores and the rest. Not something we want to experience again very soon, because in the next night, I think Raven opened up her satchel right after they had healed her. She opened up her bag and showed Sam, like basically threw spores right in Sam's face, showed him that all of her food supply in the bag had been eaten and like taken over by this mushroom. That was a heck of a day too, that I didn't see coming as the GM. But it was one of those plots that was fairly unavoidable to me. I knew the parameters of like how aggressive this fungus was. We had just talked about how they were treating it with hazmat gear and keeping you sort of isolated, and for Raven to figure out in the beginning of our very next session, she goes, "I left the spores in there. Oops." And just throws them right in Sam's face on accident. Crazy iconic moment.
I rolled the dice on not to tell you or not.
Well, it was a good moment. It was, I hope that was one of those are one of those times when I hope that as a GM, I didn't keep you guys on a plot longer than you wanted. If there's anything that I feel very self-critical about in particular, it's the times that I keep you guys doing one task for too long. The Wendigo Cave battle being probably the longest singular thing we actually ever did. That spanning over the first 3 episodes of the recorded series, but you guys managed to find, I hope, really interesting things in it, and we got to explore at least 2 separate maps, and then I think we could even argue that, like, there were at least 3 areas to the map. 2 separate maps, 3 separate areas. And that's the pristine grotto I'm referring to. So that's a question I might want to work in here at some point too. And I'll give you guys some time on that for the back burner. But if we remember it, I do want to ask what your guys' thoughts are on the grotto, if that's something you want to go back to. And by the way, if you want to work that into any of your other answers too, that'd be perfectly okay as well. And you know what? I think Sky's gonna say he doesn't have too much to answer in this next one, so I might tack that onto yours in particular. So next question, we're gonna start back over in the roster here. Sky, does Sam have any prized possessions in the wasteland? And if so, what are they and why?
I would say that at a very young age, pretty much since he left home at 17, he had to get over the idea of keeping prized possessions. Leaving home, growing up in somewhat of a tumultuous house because of his father, there already wasn't a big to-do about material things for him. And even more so joining the military, nothing is yours. Everything is government issued. So coming back from the military, he kind of saw that maybe he could open up like that again and start kind of getting prized possessions. So he started a nice little, he got a snow globe collection. He had his, I would say not a possession, but his wife was one of his most prized things in his life. But he wasn't home when the bombs dropped, and then so he lost all of that in an instant, as far as he knows. So, again, these past 25 years, he has learned just not to keep too much at heart. Maybe this can change in the future. Maybe he'll learn to open up again, especially as things start to kind of become normal and at Hope, and he starts to kind of help build this town back to some sort of normalcy from before the war. With all that being said, there is one thing he still can't live without, and that would be gray tortoises, the cigarette.
That is an interesting one. I've noticed he likes his gray tortoises, so that's something we gotta keep tabs on for the future. And I think the way I want to ask about things, the pristine grotto, but also other areas that the characters have gotten to, how does that play on Sam's mind going into sort of just touching at a distance these pristine pockets from life before the bombs, to go in there and see some wildlife? I think we had said something like there's some dragonflies, maybe butterflies. There's some just growing flora there that is, just taking on and growing over that space. And that was just something very interesting to note in that session. I think that wasn't even something I had largely planned out the very first time we stumbled upon it, but just a cool thing. And Sam's, I'm double parting this question. So first part being, how does he feel encountering these pristine parts, but also how does his military mind come into play? I think it's been you who's mentioned creating like a different site, like a fallback point, a beta site or something that we could evacuate the villagers, the townspeople to in case of emergency. How does he, here maybe is the way to tie it together, is how does he feel about protecting these little bits of the pristine pre-war life he's encountered anew?
I think that you use the perfect word there, protecting. I think that he definitely sees it as something that is not around. You don't find that very often in the wasteland. Tell rumors in the capital wasteland of an oasis, and things like that. But there's not much kind of pristine, beautiful foliage, and that, and even like insect life that hasn't been mutated beyond recognition. So I think that he understands the importance of that, and I think he understands the importance of keeping it safe from ne'er-do-wells or anyone. I mean, who knows what that kind of place could be used for. There's a lot of science in Fallout, and there's a lot of bad science. So having something like that, and having these kind of like, pre-radiated strains of who knows, of plant life, of insect life, that could be used for good or bad. So I think that it definitely is something that he has in the back of his mind, and something that he wants to protect.
Ooh, well said. I like the comment about the bad science out there, because it's like there's a major Fallout game installment about trying to get unmutated peoples. Wait, that is a lot of them. So that could make it a hotspot for enemy interest in potentiality. I didn't even really think about it that way. So you're shining some light on that. I think the last question I want to ask on this one, and again, I am focusing on the pristine grotto just because it's a fascination to me, an unexpected thing. I wonder, how do you think the people of Hope would do if we did have to fall back to an area like that? Do you think that would put those things at risk? Do you think that people would be able to maintain, protect and preserve that pre-war slice? Or do you think the desperation of the wasteland, humanity's sometimes clumsy footing, like, do you think that we would actually endanger and potentially ruin it if we were to camp out there extended?
I think that there is definitely always that possibility, and it makes you wonder long term what a solution might be. I mean, almost deifying a place like this, almost giving it like a religious subtext, and like having people maybe worship something like this, which has been shown in like other Fallout games and stuff. We might just have to program them.
That is very interesting. I like that a lot. Dark Knight, we're coming back to you with a similar question here. Does Jim have any prized possessions in the wasteland? What are they and why?
Yes. Jim has, well, so the story is, this was I'd say about 24, 23, somewhere around that age. He went through a period of mourning. His grandfather had passed due to complications with a broken hip that he never recovered from, and it resulted in a period of sadness. But he ended up going to his grandmother's house and was cleaning out the closet full of some of his old stuff, and came across a hat that he actually tried on, and it fit pretty well. It looked pretty nice, and he decided to keep it. So now in the wasteland, he wears this hat that his grandfather owned, and cherishes it deeply.
That's a really cool item for him to have. And it makes me want to remind the table that there is a mechanic in the game where if you ever feel like being narrative with those nostalgic items, if your character spends time thinking about them, reminiscing about them, encouraging themselves, sort of self-motivation in that way, it can restore a luck point to your characters. And I think the very first one we just gave out was Sam recently. I think it was Sam, pardon me for not remembering completely, but I think you had said something like kind of just dwelling on something about your character. And for that, I wanted to reward a luck point. I just want to, again, remind people about that. It's something we've maybe, I guess I should say, it's something I have edited the rules for a bit. If you were to play the rules very harsh and strict, this nostalgic item is something that certain characters get based on their origin of choice. But I think that given, just narrative sake, and you guys aren't new to the wasteland, and most of this is going on at this stage is very so close to the pre-war era. I just want to really remind people that if you have a nostalgic item like that, you can dwell on it. If you don't have one yet, but want to acquire one along the way and continue to bring that up as part of your character's lore, I very much welcome that sort of stuff. Whether you find, maybe an old journal of someone that matters to you, or find some fancy glasses or specs that you want to, wear on certain occasions, or whatever the thing could be. If that ever comes up to you, I would very much welcome that sort of role play. And so, Jim, DK, question for you about Jim, that in relation to that pristine grotto, in relation to these areas you've started to explore, you were the very first one to go, for example, into Modus's underground area. How is Jim handling these tastes of pre-war life thrown sort of in his face? Very unexpected at times.
Well, I'd say, especially in that Modus little underground area, very curious. It's piquing curiosity, because a lot of these places, like the grotto, for example, deep inside, they managed to stay very untouched from the radiation. And with the Modus's place, it's just a very ominous, very like a maze almost of different corridors and halls and different rooms and stuff. So there's a lot of curiosity going through his head, because he's just so interested in finding out and learning about what this is, what happened, where just the general, what is and what isn't about it,
Absolutely. It makes me wonder what Jim would do. And I kind of asked this in my last question, so pardon me for maybe repeating myself, but it does make me wonder what Jim would do if he sort of got to be very much in his element with that sort of level of technology in an extended form. Raven, pardon me maybe for speaking to your character here a little bit, but from what I very well understand at this point, Raven's character, I think, would probably feel fish out of water to be in a high-tech bunker for some extended period of time, because she's of nature and of the wasteland itself, the above ground, not the pre-war life. So it just makes me wonder, again, back to Jim, how he might take to having access to that, whether that's gives him ideas of things to do. I mean, he is the technician of the crew, whether he has interest in ever building robots for his own purposes or setting up mainframes and systems like that. I mean, we've established communication across parts of Appalachia, but again, to dwell on Modus for a second, we don't really know too much about what his motives are to be getting into that radio facility. What is he connecting with outside of there is a perpetual interest to me.
Yeah, with with the drugs and medications and that sort of thing, there's the concept of overdosing. but with like a room full of technology such as that Modus like radio tower thing. I don't know. I think he would kind of like overdose on like just having so much technology to play with it. He wouldn't know what to do.
That's pretty great. Maybe he can get in there someday and take advantage of the mainframe. Let's go ahead and pivot over to Raven. It is your time to answer the same question. So what does Raven have as a prized possession in the Wasteland? Anything in particular, and why is that?
It's my hood. It's one my mother made me. She took down a rag stag and made it from the hide.
Whoa, that's cool. A hood made by your mother. Is she a character that is still of the living? Do we know where she is? Again, you can be as cagey with these answers as you'd like. And this also, as she's maybe thinking of an answer to that, whether mom's around or not, it's a thought to all of you that if you ever want to do more detailed character development and start working in deeper parts of your character, we could always kind of do little one-on-ones and sort of discuss these loose ends. Raven and I sort of already had started that process just one day out of boredom and convenience that we were in a call, and I was already working on part of the map, and I started asking her, like, do you know this area? If this is where you're from, do you know this building? Do you know that place? And so that's going to be something the characters get to take a little advantage of in the future is... I don't feel like I wrote it in the most substantial way for the lore. I think it's maybe something we could spend some time dwelling on in the future. Maybe it's more town hall meetings and planning. But I did mention how in the back of the APC, while you're on that trip up from the Red Rocket Station to Hope, that you guys got around to maybe scratching in some locations on a map that's hanging on the wall in there. You got a map of the Appalachian area that the soldiers had left around. And, you know, if you took any time to pencil in some names or make some red X's on there, for example, those could be some little POIs for your characters to either loot or avoid in the future, whatever you think is wisest. So about your mother. Go ahead, Sam. Sky.
I just want to say I think that would be a great idea. I have had a lot of ideas for what's going on with Sam. I think that a lot of the things that have been happening in the world have made him too busy to pursue really anything. So I feel like those things would maybe come to him, which leads to nice little twists and turns for the future.
I like that. And I think I'm going to have some questions for you on that in the next roundabout, because we're going to talk about which factions they've enjoyed and maybe disliked a little bit here in the next round. So try and pin that in your memory, Sky.
Not sure about her, have not worked that out.
Oh, that's okay. That's very okay, especially considering the cultists, they march to their own beats, sort of. They've got their own higher calling that they're serving, and it will just be interesting to see. You with Raven have clearly stepped away from the rest of the Mothman cultists, and that begs a question as to why you've stepped away. Is it a disagreement with the rest of your peoples? And then if so, which side of the aisle is Mom on? Is she someone that also stepped away from them? Is she with... We kind of know there's already some different factions to Mothman cultists. Some are to the more dark and evil side of the Mothman, and others are on the side of enlightenment and kind of seeing beyond this reality. So I think that's an interesting thing to ponder. Where's Mom? Is she still kicking? Is she a part of the good side, the bad side? Is she someone that could be recovered and brought to Hope or any of these other safe spots? Or is she out there amongst the moths of the night? Okay, Raven's saying that she's going to answer some of that in the next question. Very good. So let's go over, start at the top. We got Sky up. This is a question I really like. How do you feel about the various factions you've encountered? Because you've come across quite a few. I'll just name that you've met the Settlers of Hope. You have met the Free Radical Raiders. You've seen them a couple times. I'm really glad we've been able to explore them more than just a one-time thing. You got to meet Rusty, who is kind of by extension part of both of the people I've mentioned. He's hanging with the Settlers, but he's actually their bridge pretty well. and you've met Modus up there in the radio tower bunker. We don't really know too much about where he's actually located, if his consciousness is there or somewhere else. You've met the cultists with the infinity symbol upon their chests over on the bridge that looks to go over to Ohio. And if there's anyone else I'm missing that you want to bring up, you're welcome to do so, Sky. But how are you feeling about these people? Any you like? Any you dislike? What's your feelings?
Overall, I would say that most of them seem like very fine folk. They're all working hard, mostly, to do what's best for their group. Just to go into a little bit more detail with each of them, like Hope, I would say, most important thing on the list. I mean, these were the first people that the entire group really came across. They were very accepting of us, very friendly. They helped us out, and Sam has just taken it upon as like a mission to make sure that these people are safe and that this town is prospering, because if this town can prosper, then that means that we can do it elsewhere throughout this entire wasteland. The free radicals, with them being marked as a raider group, you're a little bit cautious about them to begin with, but they have shown that they're not like many of the other raiders around Appalachia and the wasteland as a whole. They definitely they're stern, and you wouldn't want to cross them, but they are reasonable people, and we're able to work out deals with them. We're able to talk to them, and I would say that Sam is a pretty personable person. It has a lot to do with the high speech, so it makes it kind of easy to communicate with people that you might consider, somewhat villains in some aspects. Rusty, I love Rusty. Both me, Skylar, and Sam, we love Rusty. He's a money-minded guy, which is in real life I am not too keen about, but in the game he's fun. It makes it so much fun because you can kind of play him a little bit with that. If you kind of bring up that there is money to be had, his ears perk up, and he's a little bit more inclined to kind of work with you and to help you out. Modus is untrustworthy to me. Maybe it has to do with the fact that that Sam doesn't really understand this AI. That perhaps playing with humanity that way, that creating something that mimics humanity like that, is playing God. Maybe that puts a little bit of fear into him. And I think that he and everyone else is aware that there is something beyond Modus. There's something. He's not really open about who is above him. And I think there's more to be had behind his story. The Infinity Cultists are something I am very excited to explore further. It's not, we don't know a lot about them yet. I am excited to see the future of them, though. I'm excited to see what the orb is about and if the orb is real.
I love those answers. Those were really, really great. And I have like a dozen spin-off questions for them. So with what I can remember, I like your questions about Modus in particular, because I think he's a very interesting character in Fallout 76, and I'm going to be cagey with what I say, but I also recognize some people probably know Modus's lore better than I do. Some people may not know it very well at all, but for those who have played through his storyline in Fallout 76, this is one of those weird moments I am going to pat myself on the back for a second, because when I was trying to do his voice in playing him, I didn't really know how effectively I was channeling it until I listened back to myself sort of on accident, and I'd also watched like the next day like a lore thing on Modus, and it was one of those deals where I was like, wow, crazy how some of that stuff does seep into your subconscious, and like like he has a very interesting speech pattern, and like you say, he's very cagey about like what information he gives out, and you can't really ever tell if that's him disliking you so much as just being effective. Like he's kind of got a need to know sort of level of information sharing, and when you guys approached him, he was pretty amenable to your requests. Like anything that fell within his realm of doability, he was pretty keen to assist with. And I think part of that too is that you guys had won some goodwill with him by I think Raven, you had given him the fusion core, if memory serves, so you had powered up the radio station. When they got there, it was sort of low on juice, or it didn't really have much at all to work with, and that was going to be a task of theirs, was go get a fusion core. And I think Raven was like, "Hey, you mean one of these?" and pulls it out of the bag, and the rest. Raven here in chat briefly says, never did the Modus quest in game, but I guess I can guess how it goes, having met House and Eden. He's an interesting character, and to what Sky touched on, like who's above him, who's he talked to, what else is he up to is all I can ask. I also want to make it clear, I have as a GM even, I can't really spoil many of these things because there's elements that I don't know yet of these plots. That's what I love about it being collaborative storytelling, is you guys going to places and making decisions that I wouldn't really expect. To your point there a second ago, Sky, when you said Sam has a really high speech check, I mean, that's really fantastic because it leads to you being able to talk down things like the Free Radical Raider outpost on the road there and actually have a nice conversation with the guys. That was when they had just been attacked by Mothman cultists. And so I think you in particular as a player and there by extension through Sam have really definitely done a more socialized approach to this game, which is great. And that came up as a sort of test in the last episode where you came across the last Postman of Hope and had the chance of blowing his brains out or helping or collaborating with him, and in which you chose that one and got rewarded for it. I think before I shut up here, I just want to say that I'm personally very interested in how many people you recruit to Hope. Maybe that's just something that I like in real life. Maybe that's something I like in all of these video games. But I like it when you got your guild hall and you get all your NPCs to come to it. Like, it's one of my favorite things out of the Skyrim Oblivion style games is like, look at all my people that have flocked to me. I want to say look at all my friends, but look at all these people who are here and working and prospering. And I see some of that when I look at what you've done with Hope, where there's 3 protectrons that you've activated from the town. There's the one you brought back to the town. A guy we haven't really talked to in a while is the Nuka-Cola Protectron, who was being fixed up in the Nuka-Cola joint. If you guys ever want to stop by and talk to him. You talked about bringing the cultists back there, the infinity symbol one. So I'll be really, really interested to see how, in particular, Sam's silver tongue works out for that sort of stuff. I really like the bridge building that you're doing with that character.
And to your point about that type of aspect in video games, it's one of my favorite things in video games too. I love building up my group, my what have you, my village. It's really prevalent in like the Assassin's Creed series, which I'm playing right now, and it's one of my favorite aspects of it. And if I could put down the sword and convince everyone to come to Hope instead of, I've mentioned this before, but we have yet to kill a single human NPC. Which I think is kind of awesome. It may have to come down to it one day. Knock on wood, it may come down to it. But I would like to try to use speech first, if that's one option that you don't have in the actual Fallout video games. Is just talking to people first. It's something you don't have in many video games because they're just not programmed that way. And what I appreciate with the tabletops over that is that we do have that opportunity.
That's really cool. And I wonder how that's going to impact in the next episode. We are kind of gearing up for a confrontation with humanoids, and just flat out humans. So I'll be very interested to see how interactions, and that's to say, if you guys go that route, if Sam, I always welcome people changing the direction on things. I, as a GM, may not always have something prepared for you for that. Like the night you guys wanted to go into the Hope Post Office, I'm so glad we waited a week. We had tech problems, but also I'm just glad we waited a week because I knew that I had these like loose threads of what I wanted to do in that facility, but I didn't have it together. And in fact, I'm extra happy that it took a week because I didn't have the office built in there yet, the where you found the terminal and the body and everything. And so I had this idea of a guy working in the back still, but I wasn't sure how to get you from the front to the back. So when I think you with Sam said something like, oh, the door's jammed, like we can't get back there tonight, it was quite a happy moment for me where I could spend some more time and flesh it out. So there's kind of a happy medium there between flying by the seat of your pants with I'm drawing a blank on the word. Improv. I like the fly by the seat of your pants improv. Sometimes I get some of the best stories out of it together when we're doing this stuff. But it's also fun at times to refine a plot hook a little bit. And just, again, it let me give you guys a moral dilemma to deal with. Without taking too much further time on that one question, I want to move on to DK and ask you the same thing. How do you, as Jim, feel about the various factions that you've encountered? And again, we just talked about the Cult of the Infinity. We talked about the Free Radicals, Modus, the People of Hope. One I didn't really throw at Sky exactly because I guess we really haven't met them yet too, is the Mothman cultists. You got one with you too. So how's Jim dealing with all these different peoples?
Well, it's like in the old days before the war. It's all politics. You got to play it right, and you got to find ways to talk things in a certain way and do things in a specific manner. But like some of these guys, like the free radical raiders. I mean, raiders in general, I just have a predisposition to not really trust too much because they seem like they don't have like any sort of plan. They're just kind of like, going rogue and just doing what they want and how they see fit. They're a little bit iffy on my radar. That cult, I am curious.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see how they.
Oh, could you say that again, DK? I think we had a little audio cut out there.
No, I'm just saying that that they're very mysterious, and I'm interested to see and learn more about what their whole deal is.
Yeah, I'm very excited for you guys to explore some of that. I can tease that I have a complex plot hook on the other side of the Ohio River, and I'm not teasing anything because it's impossible, I think, near impossible for you guys to guess what the hell I'm even hinting at. I just want to say that on the other side of that river, there are a couple things that, depending on how you play them, depending on what areas you go to first or second or last, will affect just different timed mechanics across the wasteland. There are things happening in the background, as I've long said. You've reestablishing connection. I mean, you guys literally reestablished connection to a whole new region that hadn't been in radio vicinity before, and not only that, but back to the Modus stuff. You also have him listening in. I don't know that that's something we've really talked about too much above board either, but part of your exchange with him to use that area is knowing that he is getting all of those signals, everything that's being transmitted through that tower, and maybe beyond. I actually don't know, but maybe beyond are being tapped and refined by him. So in a weird sense, you do have this sort of untrustworthy, but also somewhat helpful kind of big brother who is actually very much watching what you're doing. And for as quiet as he might be, as silent as he might be, yeah, it leaves some things to discover in the future. Raven says in chat here, it's Ohio, so it's not real. Oh gosh. Does Jim have any thoughts on the People of Hope? What's he been thinking? I mean, he's met up with Lena and Tom, who are both very techy and very inclined in that way, and so I'm kind of curious how he feels about getting into that sort of network.
Well, I have to say that at the beginning I was a little bit unimpressed because their discrimination against Raven in that regard, the get-go. But once things settled down, I think everything kind of switched. I'm, on board with all of that. At that time, it was, hold on now, just because Raven has this look, you want to assume things, and it just didn't fit right. But I think now that getting to know everybody, I think Jim is pretty well liking the town in it.
I like to hear it. I'm going to pivot over to Raven with the same question for you. She's in a whole different world of dealing with these peoples, these factions. Are there any that she likes, immensely dislikes, or distrusts, or where does Raven stand? She's also surrounded by technology like Mr. Handy, Alfred. You've got Protectrons around her, the mayor. I don't know if Raven would be familiar with these things. Like maybe she would. Maybe she'd seen some of them as hostile combatants recently. I mean, my guess, that would be probably the most likely, is that Mothman cultists would come across them as hostiles. But now you're in a town of people who have the skills to reprogram them and deploy them and start rebuilding life with them. So I've got to imagine that's a little bit of a shock to Raven's system.
So far, the only faction I know are the Mothman followers. They chased me and Mom out of village when we started to follow the violet eye moth, not the red eye one. There was a small group of us around, 5, but I got lost while hunting. I think they were to a pleasant area that was south.
Point Pleasant. Okay, that's good to know. I like hearing that. It is an interesting thought to Raven's kind of past as to what other factions might she have already encountered, ones that Jim and Sam don't know of yet. I mean, if Raven lived her entire life in this, this span of 25 years since the bombs dropped. I think we're actually 28 or something. We play, for the nerds out there, the lore nerds, we play in real-time Fallout 76 timeline. So I think we're 28 years after the bombs dropped for you nerds like me. How do you think she's come across other peoples there, Raven? Has she encountered other raiding groups? I mean, I don't know how terribly far. You're not terribly far from Crater, I imagine. I wonder if Raven's had any dealings, or if that's been too far for her, or kind of just curious of what her expeditions were like. Whether you want to answer that now, again, you could be cagey or not.
Not sure.
Fair enough. Food for thought. Now, we are getting to the 1 hour mark here, and I am very happy with the questions that I have asked and the feedback, the answers that you've all given. Let me see. Yeah, we're going to tie these last questions together. And this is also a space for you guys to give some final parting thoughts for tonight. If there's something you heard earlier that you wanted to give more elaboration on, feel free to do so. So I'm going to take these 2 questions. It is, what technological innovations or devices do you miss most from before the apocalypse? If you could restore one of these pieces of pre-war tech to working conditions, what might it be? Sky, we'll start with you and Sam.
Well, Sam wasn't a super huge technology guy before the war started, or even after. With him being, the background in medicine and the background in the military, he's more focused on, the human anatomy and mechanical weapons, just the mechanical functions of that. One thing, though, is that he had a mint 2053 all black Highwayman. That's a nice little car. It unfortunately was stolen weeks before the war. Where it ended up, nobody knows. It could have ended up all the way in West Virginia, but that would probably be the one piece that he would like back.
That is really cool. And I'm just going to, for all of us here, the lore asset maker that does the stuff through Patreon, there is a copy of Highwayman right there. in the chat. If I can remember to the people at home, I'll try and put a picture in the Substack notes, but if not, you can just Google it. Really cool. I'll admit, I don't know a ton about the make and model of Fallout cars and the names, so I really like that. That is a cool bit of kit, and I guess I want to spin just a thought off of it and say, building on what you said moments ago, Sky, about how the game lets us do things, the TTRPG lets us do things that the video games don't. And I think restoring vehicles to working condition is one of those things I'm the happiest about. For those who have taken the time to go to look at the West Virginia lumber mill in Fallout 76, that is already an established bit of lore that they are repairing vehicles. And in fact, I even used straight from the wiki the names of the people doing. I think it was like Lugnut or something was out there. I love that name, just super generic raider name, Lugnut, for anyone who does mechanic work. Lugnut and his crew were out there fixing up vehicles Mad Max style, and I just think it's really cool. There's a part of me, I'm just really happy where the APC came into play too. Like, getting you guys a vehicle was something unexpected. I didn't really think about, plan that out, that, I'm going to give them this APC. But that just worked out extremely well. I was just very happy with how the map turned out for that and your behaviors on the map. I don't think that raider encounter, the free radicals, was really established ahead of time. I knew that there was going to be some raiders there, but I had no idea what their real disposition was going to be. And speaking of also about how you guys don't shoot first, I mentioned this to you all off air, but that encounter with the free radicals at the Red Rocket, there was a quick discussion amongst Sam and Raven that they were talking about, they were going to potentially shoot first. That you'd asked me a question like, are there any obvious signs of who these raiders are? And I was like, no, nothing really you can make out very easily. And so there was a brief conversation about maybe we just go up there and blast them. And I was really happy that you didn't do that, because that opened a lot of doors to future things and future episodes. So really, really cool. I don't know if you want to say anything more, Sky, but if not, we'll pivot over to DK. You let me know.
I'll just say that I am happy that in this group, often cooler heads prevail.
Cooler than even mine. I can't say I would act much differently if I were playing in this, but I do have those nail biting moments of will the cooler heads prevail, or is the last mailman going bye sort of questions in my head. Again, same thing with those raiders. I was like, oh my gosh, these dudes might just get obliterated right here. So yeah, and it also, the more friends and allies you make across the wasteland, the more exciting it makes it for me in future episodes where you guys could call upon certain groups for help. And this is something I think you all know. We've talked about faction reputation. You're all veterans of the Fallout franchise, so none of this is mind-blowing stuff. But again, it's what the TTRPG lets us do. That, maybe with some speech roles involved, but still, you could really win over different factions to do you different solids. And yeah, I'm going to be really interested as you guys get more supply routes and things set up across the wasteland, what sort of growth you guys could do. So with that being said, let's talk about Jim in the same light, DK. What technological innovations or devices does he miss most from before the apocalypse? And if he could restore any piece in particular, what might that be?
Well, this is something that Jim, growing up, he was never, very well off. He was, on the lower class end of things, and so he never really had much. And his family couldn't afford, access to a vault in the event of disaster. But he's always wanted to get his hands on a Pip-Boy and
was that a
work with
Pip-Boy?
that.
I'm so sorry, it cut out on you.
Yes.
A Pip-Boy.
Yeah.
That would be a cool piece of kit to come across. That would unlock a lot of options for you guys, too.
Mm-hmm.
As you can imagine, they are quite rare in the wasteland, but there are some areas that those could be gathered, and I could definitely see Jim sporting one. We've also talked about this really briefly. I'm just getting my time to nerd out about some mechanics as we chat. I really like this format we've done tonight. That the Pip-Boy grants you the ability to target specific points on the body using VATS without making difficulty tests increase. So for anyone at home that doesn't know the rules super well off your head, top of your head, that if, let's say you want to aim at a target's head, if you're aiming at the head in particular, the difficulty of the test goes up by 1. And that is just the kind of the trade-off of just shooting fairly randomly versus like you're going to do a pinpoint precise shot. And that affects things like Mirelurks who have shells on their back, but they have a very weak, vulnerable head. So there's times you really want to aim for it. And using a Pip-Boy, again, grants you that opportunity to aim specifically for parts of the body and pluck away without a difficulty increase. That's a powerful, powerful benefit. Let's hope Jim is lucky enough to find one out there. Was there any other pieces of kit or anything like that you wanted to mention, DK, or is the Pip-Boy the one that kind of got you?
That's the one.
This is also very helpful for me. I like it. Raven, we're coming back to you. Last big question of the night, which is there any items, technological innovations or otherwise, you weren't around and thriving, and you weren't born yet pre-war, but after everything you've seen so far in the Wasteland, is there any item that you would want to get your hands on? Anything you'd restore or otherwise try and protect and keep pristine?
This tech is all new to me. That APC with the big boom gun is great. I would like to find more booms. Well, I wouldn't mind finding a train. I saw a pic of that one time while hunting. I thought it was just drawing, but we have the APC, so that train has to be real, right?
Ooh, trains. I really like the idea of trains in Fallout. I guess I'll ask the crew here because I'm not a Fallout 4 player. In Fallout 4, is it ever established that the train lines get fixed up in that area at all? Or is that not a part of that game? Because I'll do the most light teaser in the world and say that there is a module out there for the Fallout TTRPG, which does revolve around some train lines being reestablished. And that's all I'll say about it. It doesn't affect our game at all, unless you guys are going, well, that does, never mind, that wouldn't affect anyway. That's 200 years in the future. But I'll just say that again, for other players out there, the TTRPG, the idea of the trains being kind of reestablished and getting running again is not unique just to this thing we're doing. I'm not sure if it's just mods, but I feel like some of the games that are based out west might have a little bit of that as well. I'm not sure.
Well, and I would also say that, trains are really pivotal to Appalachia, both in real life and in Fallout 76. There's about 20 train stations in that game, so it is not all too surprising that we could get some sort of trains coming back.
You are right. There's a lot based around the train stations. That's where they have the vendors and things like that. It's a big interest to me.
Yes, they're one that runs to Nuka World in 4.
Oh, really? That's cool. That's very cool.
And I guess there's also the subways in Fallout 3. You are able to get one of them up and running to go to a DLC area.
Oh, well, I always tell you guys the sky is the limit. If you can ever justify your character's ambition and, where there's a will, there is a way. That is something I want to highlight, underline, and draw a big old circle around. It's like, where there's a will, there's a way. If you think something would benefit the Wasteland and you can find a way to make it happen through your skill, through someone else's skill, through connections you make, you could do it. And that's something that I hope has also just come through in the way that I've presented our area of Appalachia is, I'm repeating myself again, but I really like seeing these factions come together and have some substantial growth. I would go so far as to say that our game is probably more centered on factions than it is even on individual characters. Because there's other ways to play this game where you play more like a harsh survival game where you're harshly tracking hunger and fatigue and all these other things that happen to your character. And that's good and groovy. That's fine. But I guess I've, in passing, just as we've gone through, sort of naturally kind of made the idea that the focus would be on groups of people instead of just like people stressing about their character survival. I think that's also something you all sort of told me in the sort of session zeros and things we were doing as well, was that we weren't trying to kill off these characters right away. And that's sort of an interesting shift maybe that I've heard some of you talk about. That's something we could save for a future episode, I think might be a good teaser, if any of us remember to talk about it, is that I've heard some of you mention more recently, like, well, if my character died, I would re-roll as X, Y, and Z. And so I think that's kind of an interesting thing from a GM's perspective, kind of listening to how the table reacts, that the perspective has gone from like, really don't want my character to die, to, yeah, hey, if he dies, I'm going to re-roll such and such a character. And I think that's a really cool way to look at these characters, Fallout in general, etc., is that it is a harsh world. It is a horror story, after all. But it's a bubblegum horror story. There's a happy side to it all too. Even if it's just denial, plugging your ears and la 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 la, just kind of singing along to "Way Back Home" by Bob Crosby or something. It's I'm just very interested to see how you all decide what ultimately becomes of these characters, because we are playing in a rather large sandbox style game where there is just a fairly slow moving plot in the background, but it's all about how much you guys enjoy your own characters. And if there's a day that they become boring to you, or Appalachia becomes boring to you, I've said this time and time again, that's where that question comes in. If you want to even just retire them to town where they just hang out there, or, again, maybe you decide you're tired of Appalachia, so you get in a vertibird and fly off into the sunset to some other greener pastures out there. There's always those sort of possibilities, and I'm always very excited to see where you guys take that stuff. If not today, then in months from now. Anyone else want to give any kind of closing thoughts on this sort of stuff for tonight? Otherwise, again, I'm going to leave that as a sort of bookmarked topic for the next time.
I guess one closing thing I have to one of your last points is that I just, we beat this point into the dirt, but I love how we can shape the rules of this game. We, in the session zeros and stuff, and I think we all know each other enough that we know that we don't like micromanaging. So dealing with the fatigue and all of that stuff is not a super big priority, which is nice. Like you said, I much prefer prioritizing social things in the game.
Well said. That is very well said. Well, if nobody else has any other thoughts for tonight, I think this is a perfect place to bring our Overseer log to a close. This has been a wonderful first encounter, having the whole gang at the table, and I'm thankful that you all have helped me hold to my word that I have promised them for 8 episodes that we would have the gang come together, and I thank everyone for the flexibility of letting me have that time, as I've learned other people's schedules with different living arrangements and kind of all kinds of different things along the way. I'm really glad that we do our game. It's certainly the highlight of my week. I love coming together and doing that. And I am very excited for the future and where it takes us. I also leave this door open to people too, is that as I get more familiar with this game, I certainly want to host some more one-offs for people, maybe 3-offs, little mini campaigns where people spin up some characters and just have some fun with it. Heck, I just watched one on YouTube recently. I can't remember the channel's name. I really should give them credit. But it was just fun seeing them. They all dressed up in these vault jumpsuits, and they're all at a physical table. So they have like this really nice kind of set design going on. They're all playing within a vault. It's like a 3-part series, but they're all like vault characters, and they're dealing with the struggles of life in a vault. And I just think like that's such a cute little concept for a 3-off series, like a mini series. It's just so neat. And that's the cool part about learning these rules, is that we can take these adventures to all different aspects of the Fallout universe. To that end, Modifius, the company who puts together this Fallout game in coordination with Bethesda, Modifius has announced that we're getting a bunch of new books into the future. I think they're timing this stuff to coincide with the Fallout TV series season 2. They are doing, I think we said New Reno is going to be one of them. I can't remember if that's the solo game they're doing. Modifius does some Star Trek solo plays. Like, you can buy a book that's just like you do the adventure by yourself, and I think that's really cool. They're going to add one of those for Fallout, so you don't need a table of friends per se, but you can just, go at it on your own. However, they're already, talking that they're going to be adding some other encounters and such like that for us. They just released, I think it was Enclave Soldiers just a couple week ago, maybe. So they put out some new NPCs for everyone to work with, and I think that's really great. So Modifius, if you're out there, keep up the great work. Keep pumping out the new content for us. If you are ever really listening, I want more things on the line of the Wanderer's book. That is considered in the community one of the most sought after books in this. Behind the core rule book itself, the Wanderer's Guidebook is just fantastic. It adds so many Appalachian theme things from 76. It has a huge bestiary to it. Lots of goodies. And those just give me as a GM, any GM out there, it gives us the power to introduce all kinds of new mobs and mechanics and different ways to play the game, different adversaries for you to come up against. I will shout out, too, we've got a code for their shop. It's B-Tales. B is in Bethesda, Tales is in Stories, just like the name of the show. If you use B-Tales at checkout, you'll get 10% off of your Modifius order, and we get a 10% kickback from it. So that's really great. And it gives me the segue to say for Bethesda shop, we have the codes B-Tales9 and B-Tales10 that you can use at checkout for 20% off there. If either of those codes don't work, try B-Tales 11, 12, etc. I'll be using that into the foreseeable future unless anything weird changes on the techie side. Who knows? But that's a great way to get 20% off, and I get a kickback from that. So you're keeping the lights on, you're keeping the hosting going, and all the rest, and we get to have this beautiful game. And so I want to thank all of my comrades that came out here tonight. I want to thank Sky, I want to thank Dark Knight, and I want to thank Mac Raven for sitting down and spending this hour or so chatting about this. I know you all got busy lives, and it just means a lot that we could do this, because ultimately this is a passion project, a true project of love. Like, it's I don't know. When I saw that I was interested in D&D after Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and I just knew I didn't know enough about that universe. And when I saw that there was a Fallout D&D style game, I was like, oh, this is perfect. It's something I already care about. It's lore I'm always very ravenous to learn about. And so it's hopefully my little gift back to my players here at the table, that we get to have these fun, sort of thought-provoking adventures in the wasteland. They're just really, really fun. So thank you all for joining us. We will be back on Sunday with a new episode. You can check those out on twitch.tv at Overseer Kyle, and you can check out our YouTube page. It's not a complicated URL, but Tales from Tomorrow, Fallout. If it's easier too, you can also search Overseer's Log. It's sort of just our sub-series that accompanies it. So we put out one each week for each episode that just goes a little bit into what the behind-the-scenes magic is. I like to talk about some of the software programs I use in the solo episodes, and we'll do a lot more of this in the future. I want to also tease to my crew before I let you all go, if you ever want to do a night where you ask me questions about the wasteland, I would love that. Put me in the hot seat in reverse of tonight would be a really fun idea, I think. That way I could maybe expand upon some things that I hadn't got the chance to do so. That's what your responses tonight really gave me the room to do. So thank you for letting me share my piece as well on those matters. To everyone out there listening, I hope you stay super safe. We will catch you Sunday night live. It's 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Twitch and 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. They go up into the syndicated format on Wednesdays, and on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts, we put out little B-rolls throughout the week, which get a lot of traction. So thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone that boosts those and bumps those in the algorithm. It really genuinely gets us eyeballs and attention for the TTRPG. People see us doing these little prop show-offs and little set design things, and then they go, oh my god, I didn't know there was a TTRPG for this. Hook, line, and sinker, we brought more Fallout fans into the know. We're merging the Fallout and the D&D community before our eyes. So, again, to everyone here, thank you for your time, and we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.